I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about tonight, and I've kind of had this ongoing thing that's kind of, had me a little disturbed. I don't know if disturbed is the right word, but every morning for the last, I don't know how long this started, but when I'm driving to work, and I usually go to work, I usually leave the house about 6:20 or so, and I'm heading east toward the sunrise on Ron Road where I live. And every morning there's this elderly lady that's walking on the road, coming toward me. Now I'm driving east and the sun's in my eyes, and here's this lady, and I've never had an issue where I've swerved at the last minute. I'm thinking, lady, there is a perfectly good sidewalk about 10 feet to your left. Why aren't you walking on the sidewalk? And like I say, it's probably been at least 2 years that I pass this lady just about every morning. And I just can't help but think, why aren't you on the sidewalk? It's 10 feet over. You won't get hit that way. And so, in my mind, I've been thinking, well, what are some possible reasons? What are some possible reasons why you'd walk in the street and risk getting hit by a car versus walking on the sidewalk? And I can't come up with many. Maybe the sidewalk's uneven and she's afraid of tripping. That's about the best I can do. Maybe there are some dogs on the route. She's afraid the dogs will come out and attack her. I don't know. And I keep thinking to myself, one of these days I'm going to stop and ask her, lady, why are you walking in the road? If I did that, I'd probably freak her out, so I haven't. But every morning it's like, what? So that kind of leads me, I think, into the topic that I want to talk about tonight, and that's motives, okay? Because I can't help but wonder and start placing motives on this lady as to why she's walking in the middle of the road instead of walking on the sidewalk. We tend to do that, don't we? We tend to ascribe motives to other people's behavior, and as human beings, very often we ascribe the worst-case motive to other people's behavior. Why are other people doing what they are doing? And we try to figure it out, and we give them, a lot of times, we look at ourselves and say, well, that's why I do it, and say that's why they're doing it. For example, at work, I'm currently kind of in this battle, if you will, trying to get some things in a specification that are required by the government. The Air Force requires these things, and I'm kind of butting heads with these people who want to take them out, even though they're a requirement. Well, why do they want to take them out when they're required? Well, the little bad side of me says, well, they just don't care that they're required. They just don't care what the requirements are. The other side says, well, they probably just aren't aware and I need to educate them. And from a Christian standpoint, ascribing to them bad motives, I think, gets right into the sweet spot that Jesus was talking about not judging others, okay? Now, they don't want that in there. That's unarguable. That's not judging them. That's a statement of fact. But why they're doing it, that's where I get into that shady area of ascribing motives to them that I just shouldn't do. I should think the best rather than the worst. When any of you that have had like supervision training, one of the things they talk about is when you're dealing with a problem employee, don't talk about motives, talk about behavior, right? Well, why are you coming in every 10 minutes late every day? That's the behavior, right? I don't want you to come in 10 minutes late. I want you to be on time. The motives would be because you're lazy, because you can't read a clock. Those are the kind of things that we think in our mind that we shouldn't be thinking, we shouldn't be talking about, ascribing those bad motives to other people and judging as a Christian as to why they're doing the things they're doing. So I'm going to look at two aspects of that. First of all, we'll look at Jesus and the motives that we ascribe to other people. Jesus tells us not to judge, but Jesus had an advantage on us, right? What advantage did Jesus have on us? Jesus knew their motives. We don't. Jesus knew their motives. You look at Matthew chapter 12. Jesus was casting out demons, and the Pharisees ascribed to Jesus that he was casting out demons for the devil. In verse 25 of chapter 12, in verse 24 it says, when the Pharisees heard it, they said, this man casts out demons only by Beelzebub, the ruler of the demons. So they're ascribing motive to Jesus, right? Jesus casting out demons for evil purposes. And Jesus says, in verse 25, it says, knowing their thoughts, he said to them, any kingdom divided against itself is laid to waste. So Jesus knew their thoughts. He's got that advantage over us. Jesus could react to their thoughts because he knew them. We don't. And we need to keep that firmly in mind. When we're dealing with other people and their behavior that may be problematic to us, we need to remember we don't know their motives. Another instance, Mark chapter 12, the Pharisees asked Jesus about whether they should pay taxes. And Jesus knew, it says in verse 15, their hypocrisy. Jesus knew that because Jesus was able to tell that. In Mark chapter 2, Jesus forgave the sins of the lame man who was lowered through the ceiling, and they ascribed to Jesus blasphemy because they said he wasn't able to forgive sins, and Jesus knew that. Jesus knew their hearts. Jesus knew their thoughts. We need to understand, folks, we're not Jesus. When somebody does something, we don't know their thoughts, we don't know their rationale, and it's judging of us to leap to the worst assumption that their motives are wrong. Now, talk about other people, let's talk about ourselves. What do our motives need to be like? You know, many times Jesus would talk about not only is it necessary to do the right thing, but we need to do them for the right motivation. Matthew chapter 6, Jesus had a number of things he talked about that says not only do you need to do these things, but you need to do them for the right reason. Matthew 6, verses 1 through 4, Jesus says, beware of practicing your righteousness before men. Why? To be noticed by them. Otherwise, you have no reward with your Father is in heaven. When therefore you give alms, do not sound a trumpet before you as hypocrites, do in the synagogue and the streets, that they may be honored by men. Okay, Jesus is not just concerned about the action, he's concerned about the motivation. Why are these Pharisees doing it? So they may be honored by men. Now, is Jesus saying, don't give alms? No, that's not what Jesus is saying at all. Jesus is saying, don't give alms, or do give alms, and do it for the right reason. Truly I say to you, these people have their reward in full. It goes on to say in verse 5, when you pray, you are not to be as the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and in the street corners in order to be seen by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. Was Jesus telling us not to pray? Of course not. Jesus was telling us to pray, but to pray with the right motives. Okay? Our motives need to be a conversation with God, confession of sin to God, praising to God. Our motives can't be for the praise and for the appearance to men. 16 through 18, Jesus goes on to say, whenever you fast, do not put on a gloomy face as the hypocrites do, for they neglect their appearance in order to be seen fasting by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. But when you fast, anoint your head, wash your face, so that you may not be seen fasting by men, but by your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will repay you. Jesus saying don't fast? No. In fact, Jesus assumes you're going to fast. What he says is don't fast in such a way that you get praise from other men. You get recognized by other men. So here's the concept. Jesus wants us to do the right behavior, but he wants us to do it for the right reasons. And he says quite plainly, if we do the right thing for the wrong reason, it doesn't count. You've got your reward. Whatever that wrong reason is, that's your reward. We need to do the right things for the right reasons. And we need to not ascribe the wrong reasons to other people in their actions. As Christians, we need to understand our rationale for doing things is the plank in our eye. Other people's rationale and motivation for doing things is a speck of sawdust that we don't need to worry about till we have our own situation squared away. I don't know why that lady was walking in the middle of the road. I really don't. I'd love to ask her, I really would. But it behooves me to not ascribe bad motivation to this lady. I'm going to go with the uneven sidewalk theory, and we'll leave it at that. I know that this really is not a discussion meant to encourage you in terms of responding to Jesus' call, but it is a discussion hopefully to encourage you to look at why you do the things you do and how you view why other people do the things they do, and to keep the proper perspective on that. But at the same time, if you do have a need this evening, you have a need for prayer, if you'd like to respond to the gospel call, we invite you to come forward this evening as we stand and sing.